The first message appeared at exactly 6:17 on a Tuesday morning. I know the time because I wasn't supposed to see it. Ethan's phone had buzzed across the marble kitchen island while he was upstairs shaving. Normally, I never looked at his screen. We had been married 12 years, and I'd always believed trust wasn't something you proved by snooping. It was something you practiced. But the phone lit up face up. One line. One sentence. Last night meant everything to me. I can't stop smiling. Red heart. No name. Just a heart emoji, and a number I didn't recognize. I stood frozen beside the coffee maker. The machine beeped that it had finished brewing, but I couldn't move. My first thought wasn't he's cheating. It was much stranger. What happened last night? Because Ethan hadn't been out. At least, I didn't think he had. He told me he worked late at the architecture firm, came home exhausted around 10:30, kissed my forehead while I was reading in bed, and fell asleep almost immediately. I'd been half asleep myself. Had he left again? Had someone come here? Or had everything I thought happened last night been a lie? The phone buzzed again. I know you said not to text, but I couldn't help it. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. Footsteps echoed upstairs. I grabbed the coffee mug with shaking hands and deliberately looked away from the phone just as Ethan walked into the kitchen. Morning! He smiled the same easy smile I'd seen thousands of times. The smile that had convinced me, 12 years earlier, that he was the safest place I'd ever find. He kissed my cheek. You okay? You seem distracted. I forced myself to meet his eyes. I'm fine. He poured himself coffee. His phone buzzed again. Without even looking at me, he reached over, flipped it upside down, and slid it into his pocket. Such a tiny movement. Barely noticeable. Except he'd never done that before. Not once. For the rest of the day, I tried to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe it was a client. Maybe. No. Nobody accidentally texts. Last night meant everything to me. By lunch I'd made myself physically sick imagining every possibility. At 2 in the afternoon my best friend, Maya, called. You still coming Saturday? What? The cabin. I'd completely forgotten. Every summer, 6 couples rented the same lake house for one weekend. Fishing. Barbecues. Wine. Too much food. Too many board games. Normally I loved it. This year I couldn't imagine pretending everything was normal. I don't know. You sound awful. I just didn't sleep. She paused. You want to talk? No. It came out too quickly. Too sharply. I mean, I'm okay. She knew I was lying. She just didn't push. I'll call later. That evening Ethan cooked dinner. Chicken parmesan. My favorite. Normally I'd have teased him because he always used too much garlic. Instead I watched him. Every movement. Every expression. Was he acting guilty? Or was I imagining guilt because I'd already decided he had something to hide? He looked exactly like the man I'd loved for over a decade. He laughed at stupid commercials, asked about my day, complained about traffic, rubbed my shoulders while I loaded the dishwasher. Nothing seemed forced. Nothing seemed fake. And somehow, that made it worse. Because either he was innocent, or he was frighteningly good at lying. I barely slept. Around 2:30 in the morning, I felt the mattress shift. Ethan quietly climbed out of bed. I kept my breathing slow, pretended to stay asleep. He walked into the hallway. Soft footsteps. Then, the back door opened. Closed. My eyes snapped open. What? I waited 30 seconds before following. Barefoot. Silent. The backyard was dark except for the porch light. Ethan stood near the fence, holding his phone, talking quietly. I couldn't hear every word. Only pieces. Can't. Not tonight. Stop texting. She doesn't know. My entire body went cold. Then he turned. I rushed back toward the bedroom before he could see me. By the time he climbed back into bed, I was facing the wall. Heart pounding, so loudly I was sure he'd hear it. The next morning I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I checked the phone bill. We shared an online account. One number appeared constantly. Dozens of calls. Mostly late evenings. Some after midnight. The number wasn't saved anywhere. I copied it onto a sticky note. Then I stared at it for almost 10 minutes before finally dialing. It rang twice. A woman answered. Hello. Young. Maybe early 30s. Warm voice. I panicked. Hung up. Immediately, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 5 seconds later, she called back. I let it ring. Again. Then a voicemail. Hi, someone just called from this number. Maybe it was an accident. I deleted the voicemail without listening twice. That afternoon I drove to Ethan's office. Not because I wanted to catch him. Because I wanted proof I was wrong. His assistant smiled. Oh, hi Claire. Is Ethan busy? Oh. She looked confused. He isn't here. My stomach tightened. He said he had meetings downtown. She frowned. He took a personal day. Everything inside me went completely silent. I don't remember walking back to my car. I just remember gripping the steering wheel until my fingers hurt. A personal day. He'd lied. Not maybe. Not probably. Definitely. I looked at the clock. 2:11. Where was he? I almost hired a private investigator. Instead, I followed my own husband. Not that day. The next one. He left the house at 8:15. Kissed me goodbye. I'll probably work late. Big presentation. Don't wait up. I smiled. Good luck. The second he turned the corner, I grabbed my keys. Kept 3 cars behind him. He didn't drive downtown. He drove across town. Into an older neighborhood filled with tree-lined streets and restored Victorian houses. Finally he parked. In front of a small blue cottage. I stopped half a block away. Watched. A woman opened the front door before he'd even reached the porch. She was beautiful. Not movie star beautiful. Real beautiful. Dark hair tied back carelessly. Jeans. Oversized sweater. She smiled the second she saw him. Then, she hugged him. Not politely. Not casually. The kind of hug that already knew exactly how someone felt. I couldn't breathe. They went inside together. The door closed. I sat there for nearly 40 minutes. Every possible explanation died one by one. Business meeting? No. Friend? No. Family emergency? No. Then why? Why hadn't they kissed? I finally drove home. I cried so hard I had to pull over twice. Not because I'd seen enough. Because I hadn't. The uncertainty was torture. If she'd kissed him, at least I'd know. Instead I was trapped between 2 realities. Maybe he loved her. Maybe she loved him. Maybe they'd already slept together. Maybe they hadn't. The questions hurt more than answers. That night Ethan walked in carrying flowers. White lilies. My favorite. I know I've been working too much. I thought maybe we could have dinner Friday. I stared at him. He looked genuinely hopeful. Not guilty. Not nervous. Just hopeful. Something inside me cracked. Sure. His face lit up. I'll make reservations. He kissed my forehead. Exactly the way he always had. I almost burst into tears. 2 days passed. No more strange texts. No late-night phone calls. No obvious lies. Which somehow made me feel crazier. Maybe he'd ended it. Maybe he'd been caught. Maybe. No. He didn't know I'd seen anything. Unless someone else had warned him. Friday afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then the same woman's voice. Soft. Careful. Is this Claire? Every muscle in my body tensed. Yes. I don't know how to say this. My heart stopped. But I think. She hesitated. I think we need to meet. I almost hung up. Instead I whispered. Who are you? Another pause. My name is Natalie. The name meant nothing. I know Ethan. I figured that out. No. She sounded strangely nervous. I mean, I've known him for almost a year. My vision blurred. Almost a year. Nearly 12 months. 12 months of lies. I gripped the kitchen counter to stay standing. What do you want? I need to tell you something. Then tell me. I can't. Not over the phone. I laughed. A horrible, broken laugh. You slept with my husband? Silence. Then. No. So don't insult me. I didn't. Liar. I'm not lying. Then explain the texts. I will. But not like this. I ended the call. Immediately. I couldn't listen to another word. That night Ethan canceled dinner. Emergency meeting. Of course. He kissed my cheek on his way out. I'll make it up to you. I smiled. You don't have to. He looked surprised. I mean, I have a better idea. Oh. I nodded slowly. Invite whoever you've been hiding. His face froze. Just for 1 second. barely noticeable. But I saw it. Then he forced a laugh. What are you talking about? I stepped closer. Close enough to smell his cologne. Close enough to see the color drain from his face. I said quietly, it's time she came to our house. Ethan didn't answer. Not right away. For a split second, every emotion crossed his face. Confusion, panic, anger, and something that looked almost like fear. Then it disappeared. Claire! He laughed nervously. I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. I folded my arms. Really? Really? So you haven't been seeing another woman? His jaw tightened. No. Then who's Natalie? The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost painful to watch. He recovered fast. Too fast. How do you know that name? I looked straight into his eyes. I asked first. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's complicated. I actually smiled. Not because anything was funny. Because those two words told me everything. Complicated. Not, I don't know her. Not, she's a client. Not, you're mistaken. Complicated. The favorite word of people hiding something. I figured it would be. He took a slow breath. I can explain. I hope so. Just not tonight. Why? Because this isn't something we should rush. I stared at him for several long seconds. Then I nodded. You're right. Relief flooded his face. So tomorrow. What? You'll invite Natalie over for dinner tomorrow. His relief vanished. He spent the next hour trying to change my mind. Claire, that's not appropriate. Why? It'll only make things worse. For who? He didn't answer. I walked into the bedroom and started changing the sheets. He followed me. You don't understand. I'd love to. Please trust me. I stopped folding the blanket. The irony hit so hard it almost made me laugh. You want me to trust you? Yes. The man who lied about taking a personal day. His head snapped toward me. You followed me. You lied. I had reasons. I'm listening. I can't tell you yet. There it is again. What? Yet. Always later. Always someday. Always after one more lie. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Then quietly said, I never wanted to hurt you. Those words landed like a punch. Because innocent people usually say, I didn't do it. Not, I never wanted to hurt you. I barely slept again. Around 3 a.m, I got out of bed and sat in the living room. Every memory from our marriage replayed itself. Our tiny first apartment with the leaking ceiling. Eating ramen because we couldn't afford groceries. His hand squeezing mine during my mother's funeral. Building this house together. Painting walls until midnight. Laughing when we accidentally spilled blue paint across the hardwood floor. 12 years. You don't erase 12 years because of one text. But one text can make you question every single one of them. The next morning, Ethan left before sunrise. He kissed my forehead. I love you. I didn't answer. After the front door closed, I stared at the ceiling for almost 5 minutes. Then my phone rang. Natalie. This time I answered. You shouldn't have called him out. Her voice sounded exhausted. He looked terrified when he left. Oh, you're checking on him now? No. Then why do you care? Long silence. Finally she whispered. Because you're about to blame the wrong person. I laughed bitterly. That's convenient. I know how this looks. It looks exactly like an affair. I know. Then convince me otherwise. I can't. Why not? Because the truth isn't mine to tell. That sentence stopped me cold. What does that mean? It means Ethan has to tell you. And if he doesn't, another pause. I will. I decided to stop guessing. I wanted facts. Real ones. So I drove back to Ethan's office. This time, I didn't ask his assistant. Instead, I found Marcus, Ethan's closest coworker. They'd worked together almost 15 years. Marcus smiled. Claire. Coffee. I only have a minute. We sat in the cafe downstairs. I stirred the same cup for nearly 30 seconds before asking. Has Ethan seemed different lately? Marcus frowned. Different how? Secretive. He hesitated. I probably shouldn't. Please. He sighed. He's been distracted. Work. I don't think so. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Marcus leaned closer. Around a year ago. He lowered his voice. He started disappearing during lunch. Every Wednesday. My heart sank. Wednesdays. He'd come back looking emotionally drained, like he'd been crying. I blinked. Crying. That wasn't what I expected. Ethan doesn't cry. Marcus gave me a sad smile. He did. More than once. I drove home more confused than before. Affairs usually don't leave people looking devastated every week. Unless. No. Nothing made sense anymore. At 4 that afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Natalie stood there. She looked exactly like she had outside the blue cottage. Simple sweater. No makeup. Nervous smile. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't intimidating. She just looked scared. You weren't answering. So you came here? I'm sorry. I know this is inappropriate. You think. She nodded. I deserve that. Neither of us moved. Finally, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. What do you want? She swallowed hard. I need you to hear one thing. I'm listening. I never wanted your husband. I stared at her. What? I've never tried to take him from you. Then why text him that last night meant everything? Her eyes filled with tears. Because. She stopped. Actually stopped herself. Then shook her head. I promised. You promised who? Silence. Ethan. I almost laughed again. Of course. She wiped her eyes. I know you hate me. I don't even know you. You should. She reached into her purse. Pulled out an envelope. My address. And my phone number. When you're ready. Come ask me anything. I looked down. Then back up. She was already walking away. Not running. Not rushing. Just leaving. That evening Ethan got home early. The first thing he asked was, Did Natalie come here? I froze. How did you know? His shoulders dropped. Because she called. And she said she made things worse. I folded my arms. She did. He closed his eyes. I'm trying to protect everyone. Everyone. You. Her. Myself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So now you're protecting your mistress? His eyes snapped open. She's not my mistress. Then prove it. I can't. You won't. No. He looked genuinely pained. I can't. For the first time in 12 years. I told my husband to leave. Not forever. Just for the night. He stared at me. You want me to go? I can't look at you. He nodded slowly. Packed an overnight bag. Stopped at the front door. I love you. I looked away. He waited another second. Then quietly left. The silence afterward was unbearable. Around midnight, I couldn't stop myself. I drove to the blue cottage. No lights. No cars. Just darkness. I sat across the street, waiting. At 12:47 a.m., headlights appeared. Ethan's SUV. He parked. My heart broke all over again. He got out. Walked to the porch. Natalie opened the door immediately. Of course she was waiting. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then something happened I never expected. She hugged him. Only briefly. Then. She handed him a cardboard box. He looked inside. His shoulders began shaking. Even from across the street. I could tell he was crying. Natalie touched his arm. He nodded. Got back into his SUV. And drove away. He never entered the house. Not even for a second. I waited. Confused. 5 minutes later. Natalie stepped onto the porch alone. Sat on the top step. Covered her face. And cried. Not quiet tears. The kind that bent her whole body forward. Whatever connected them. It wasn't what I'd imagined. The next morning I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the cottage. This time I knocked. Natalie opened the door. She looked exhausted. Like she hadn't slept. I knew you'd come. I almost didn't. She stepped aside. Come in. The house surprised me. There were no romantic photos. No signs Ethan spent time there. Instead, the living room walls were covered with children's drawings. Tiny handprints. Crayon pictures. School certificates. Family photos. Except, every picture showed only 2 people. Natalie. And a little girl. Maybe 8 years old. Dark curls. Huge smile. No father anywhere. I frowned. Who's she? Natalie's expression softened instantly. My daughter. I looked around again. Where is she? School. Does Ethan know her? Natalie didn't answer. Instead she walked to a bookshelf. Picked up a framed photograph. Turned it toward me. The second I saw it, the room began spinning. It was Ethan. several years younger, standing beside Natalie, holding the little girl's hand. Like a family. I couldn't breathe. I looked from the picture to Natalie, then back again. My voice barely worked. Tell me that's photoshopped. Natalie closed her eyes. I wish I could. The picture slipped from my fingers. Natalie caught it before it hit the hardwood floor. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear anything except the pounding of my own heartbeat. The photograph looked real. Not edited. Not manipulated. Ethan had one arm around Natalie. His other hand rested on the little girl's shoulder. All three of them were smiling at the camera like they'd spent years together. I finally managed to speak. Who is she? Natalie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she carefully placed the frame back on the shelf. Her name is Lily. I asked who she is. Natalie looked directly at me. My daughter. And Ethan. Another long silence. That's what you deserve to hear from him. I let out a bitter laugh. No, you don't get to drag me through this and then tell me to wait. I'm not trying to hurt you. You already have. She nodded. I know. I took one step closer. Is he her father? Natalie's eyes widened. No. The answer came so quickly that I actually believed her. At least, I wanted to. Then why does he look like family in that picture? Because Lily asked him to. What? It was taken on her birthday. Nothing about this made sense. I shook my head. I don't understand. I know. No, you don't. My voice cracked. I've been married to him for 12 years. I thought I knew everything about our life. And now I'm standing in a stranger's house looking at photos that make it seem like my husband has another family. Natalie's eyes filled with tears again. I know exactly how terrible this looks. Then explain it. She opened her mouth. Then closed it. I can't. I stared at her in disbelief. You really expect me to believe there's an innocent explanation? No. Then why won't you tell me? Because I promised someone. I don't care about your promises. I do. She whispered it so softly I almost didn't hear. I owe him that much. I left before I completely lost my temper. The drive home was a blur. Every traffic light felt too long. Every mile felt impossible. I pulled into my driveway just as Ethan's SUV turned the corner. He'd come home. He got out slowly. The second he saw my face, he knew. You went there. It wasn't a question. I nodded. I saw the pictures. His shoulders sagged. For the first time since all of this started, he didn't deny anything. He simply looked tired. So, I said quietly, how long have you had another family? His face twisted in pain. I don't. Really? I don't. I saw the pictures. I know. Then explain them. I will. When? He looked at the ground. Tonight. I laughed. You've been saying later for a week. I mean it this time. You have one chance. Neither of us spoke during dinner. The silence was suffocating. The clock ticked loudly in the dining room. Forks scraped against plates. Neither of us ate much. Finally, Ethan pushed his chair back. I think it's time. I folded my hands together. I'm listening. He looked at me for a long moment, then quietly asked, Do you remember 5 years ago when I disappeared for 3 days? Of course I remembered. His father had supposedly suffered a stroke in another state. He'd rushed to help his brother. He came home exhausted, emotionally destroyed. I'd never questioned the story. You told me your father was sick. He was. So, there was something else. My stomach tightened. What? He stood, walked into the office, returned carrying a thick manila envelope. He placed it on the table. I've carried this around for almost a year. Inside were hospital papers, medical reports, court documents, letters. I looked up. What am I looking at? My biggest mistake. He sat across from me. When I was 24, I dated Natalie. That sentence hurt. Not because he'd had a girlfriend before me. I knew he'd dated other women. It hurt because he'd never mentioned her. It lasted less than a year. We were young. We wanted different things. So we ended it. I nodded slowly. Okay. After we broke up, I moved. Started over. Met you. And I never looked back. I stared at him. So why is she back? He swallowed hard. Because last year, she found me. He handed me another document. A children's hospital letter. Lily's name appeared across the top. Diagnosis. Treatment schedule. Oncology department. My eyes stopped on one word. Leukemia. I looked up sharply. Ethan. His eyes were already wet. Lily got sick. I felt something inside me soften despite everything. I'm sorry. So am I. He rubbed both hands over his face. When Natalie contacted me, I almost ignored it. Then she told me why. I looked down again. She needed money. No. She needed help. With what? He looked toward the window. She told Lily that I was an old family friend. I frowned. Why? Because Lily remembered meeting me when she was 3. I blinked. You stayed in touch? No. I hadn't seen either of them in years. Then how did Lily remember you? Children remember strange things. He smiled sadly. I used to make paper cranes for her. That tiny detail caught me off guard. So, when Natalie called, Lily asked if the crane man could visit. I stared at him. You went. Yes. And then again. Yes. And again. Yes. Every Wednesday. He nodded. Chemo days. Everything Marcus had said suddenly clicked into place. Every Wednesday. Emotionally drained. Sometimes crying. But, I whispered. The texts. The late-night calls. He closed his eyes. I told Natalie not to send messages like that. She was emotional. So was I. I felt anger rising again. Last night meant everything to me. How is that innocent? He looked ashamed. Because, he paused. Last week, Lily rang the bell. I frowned. What bell? The remission bell. The room became very quiet. She finished chemotherapy. I remember the message. Last night meant everything to me. I can't stop smiling. My certainty began to crack. But the picture. I pointed toward the envelope. You looked like a family. His voice broke. Because that's what Lily wanted. What? She asked if we'd all stand together. Just once. So she'd have one picture with the people who made her feel safe. I covered my mouth. No. No. It couldn't be this simple. Could it? Something still didn't fit. I looked directly at him. You lied. Yes. You met another woman every week for almost a year. Yes. You hid it. Yes. You let me believe the worst. His eyes filled. I know. Why? He looked utterly defeated. Because the truth wasn't only mine. I shook my head. I don't understand. Natalie didn't want people knowing Lily was sick. She didn't want pity. And Lily. He smiled faintly. She thought I was some kind of superhero. The crane man. I wanted to believe him. But one question refused to disappear. So why didn't you tell me? He looked at me with more regret than I'd ever seen. Because I almost did. What stopped you? The promise. To Natalie? No. To Lily. He reached into the envelope again. Pulled out a folded piece of construction paper. A child's handwriting covered the front. Dear Mr. Ethan, can this be our secret until I get better? I don't want anyone to be sad before I ring the bell. My hands began trembling. Inside was a tiny paper crane taped beside glitter stickers. I couldn't stop staring at it. Tears filled my eyes. Then another thought hit me. A terrible one. I looked up. Is Lily okay now? Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he looked away. The silence lasted far too long. My stomach dropped. Ethan, he whispered. That's what I still need to tell you. Just then, someone knocked on our front door. 3 soft knocks. Ethan closed his eyes. They're early. He stood. I invited them. My heart started racing. Before I could respond, he opened the front door. Natalie stood there. Beside her, Lily. The little girl smiled brightly, holding a small gift bag in both hands. She looked at me with complete innocence. You must be Claire. Then she beamed. I've heard you're really good at baking cookies. I couldn't answer, because in that exact moment, I realized this dinner was about to reveal the one secret neither Ethan nor Natalie had been willing to tell me. For a moment, nobody moved. Lily stood on my front porch with a pink gift bag clutched against her chest, smiling at me like we were old friends instead of complete strangers. She couldn't have been older than 9. Her dark curls framed a face that was far too thin for a child her age, but her eyes sparkled with the kind of joy only kids seem capable of carrying after surviving something impossible. Hi, she said again. You must be Claire. I forced myself to smile. I am. She held out the gift bag. This is for you. I accepted it automatically. Inside was a tin wrapped in blue ribbon, homemade cookies, a handwritten tag read, "Thank you for sharing Mr. Ethan with me." My throat tightened. I looked at Ethan, then at Natalie. Neither of them spoke. "Lily," Natalie said gently, "why don't you go see the backyard? Mr. Ethan said he planted butterflies." Lily giggled. "You can't plant butterflies. You know what I mean." She skipped toward the sliding glass door. Ethan followed her outside, giving Natalie and me a few moments alone. Neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Natalie spoke. "I'm sorry." I looked at her. "I've hated you all week." "I know. I imagined every horrible thing." "I know. I even followed him." She nodded. "I saw your car that night." I blinked. "You knew." "I didn't tell him." "Why not?" "Because if I had been in your position," she swallowed hard, "I would have done the same thing." That answer hit harder than I expected. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't trying to justify herself. She simply understood. "I'm still angry," I admitted. "You should be." "I don't know who I'm angry at anymore." She looked toward the backyard. "Maybe both of us." We joined Ethan and Lily outside. Within minutes, Lily had completely taken over the conversation. She pointed excitedly toward a flower bed. "Mr. Ethan helped me build a birdhouse." She showed me pictures on a tiny pink camera. She talked about finishing chemotherapy, about ringing the hospital bell, about losing her hair, about how she wore funny hats so the nurses would laugh. Every story chipped away at the image I'd built in my head. This wasn't an affair. It was something far more complicated. And somehow, that almost made it hurt more. Because Ethan had carried an entire second life without me. Not a romantic one, but a secret one. After dinner, Lily asked if she could see the paper cranes. "The ones in the office." Ethan smiled. "You remember." "Of course." He disappeared into the study and returned carrying a glass jar filled with hundreds of tiny folded paper cranes. Lily gasped. "You kept them." "Every single one." She carefully picked one up. "You know what I wished for every time we made one?" Ethan smiled. "I think I do." "No." She shook her head. "You guessed wrong." "What was it?" She looked straight at him. "I wished I'd still know you when I grew up." Silence settled over the room. Natalie quietly wiped her eyes. Even I felt tears forming. Children had a way of saying things without realizing how deeply they landed. A little later, Lily wandered into the living room to watch television. Natalie turned toward me. "There's something else you deserve to know." I braced myself. "When I contacted Ethan, I didn't ask him for money." "I know. I didn't ask him to become part of our lives again." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled sadly. "I actually asked him not to come." I looked at Ethan. He nodded. "She did," Natalie continued. "I only wanted to know if he'd record a short video. For Lily, so she could remember the crane man." I stared at Ethan. "You went anyway." He looked embarrassed. I couldn't say no. Natalie laughed softly. "He showed up with art supplies, puzzles, coloring books." She looked at him affectionately, not romantically, but with unmistakable gratitude, and somehow convinced the entire pediatric oncology ward to spend an afternoon making paper cranes. I looked at Ethan differently for the first time in days, not as a husband hiding an affair, as a man trying to keep a promise to a frightened child. But one question still remained. I waited until Lily had fallen asleep on the couch. Then I faced Ethan. "You should have trusted me." He didn't argue. "I know." "No, you don't." Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. "I would have gone with you. I would have folded cranes. I would have sat beside her during chemo. I would have loved that little girl, too." His face crumpled. "I know. I was so afraid." "Of what?" "That you'd think I still had feelings for Natalie." I looked over at Natalie. She answered before I could. "We loved each other once." The honesty caught me off guard. She didn't look ashamed. She simply stated a fact. "But that ended long before you met him." She smiled faintly. "The man I loved at 23 isn't the man sitting here." She glanced at Ethan. "Life changed both of us." Then she looked back at me. "He's your husband. He stopped being mine years before he became yours." There was no bitterness in her voice, only acceptance. For the first time, I believed every word. Over the next few weeks, life slowly found a new rhythm. Not immediately. Trust doesn't magically return because someone explains their secret. I still struggled. Sometimes Ethan's phone would buzz, and my stomach would tighten before my brain caught up. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night remembering that first text message. Healing wasn't instant. It was a choice we kept making. Again, and again, and again. This time, there were no more secrets. If Ethan visited Lily, I went too. The first time I walked into the children's oncology ward, I finally understood why he'd never come home smiling. There were children drawing superheroes while hooked to 4 poles. Parents pretending everything was okay. Doctors who somehow carried hope into every room. It changed me. One Saturday, Lily handed me a folded sheet of paper. I made this. Inside was a family drawing. There was Natalie. There was Lily. There was Ethan. And there was me. She'd drawn us all holding hands beneath a crooked rainbow. I know we're not really family, she said. But you're my favorite grown-ups. I knelt beside her. You know what? What? Families aren't always the people who live in the same house. She smiled. I knew you'd say something smart. We both laughed. 6 months later, Ethan and I renewed our wedding vows. Not because our marriage had been perfect. Because it hadn't. It had nearly broken. Instead of a huge ceremony, we invited only the people who mattered most. Maya, Marcus, a few relatives, Natalie, and Lily. When the officiant asked if anyone wanted to share a few words, Lily's hand shot into the air. Everyone laughed. She walked to the front holding a tiny paper crane. I don't know much about marriage, she said, making the guests chuckle. But I know secrets can make people lonely. She looked at Ethan. And telling the truth is scary. Then she looked at me. But when people love each other enough, they tell the truth anyway. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Ethan and I sat on the back porch. The same porch where I'd once watched him whisper into his phone. The same place where suspicion had taken root. He reached for my hand. I'm sorry. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. I squeezed his fingers. You don't have to spend the rest of your life apologizing. I do have to spend the rest of my life being honest. He smiled. I can do that. So can I. We sat there in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared beyond the trees. Sometimes people ask me what the hardest part was. It wasn't the mysterious text. It wasn't following my husband. It wasn't meeting Natalie. It wasn't even believing, for a while, that Ethan had another family. The hardest part was realizing that love isn't destroyed only by betrayal. Sometimes it's damaged by silence. A secret kept for the right reasons can still wound the people you were trying to protect. If Ethan had trusted me from the beginning, we could have carried that burden together. Instead, we carried it alone. But we were lucky. We got another chance. The last paper crane Lily ever folded for us still sits in a glass frame on our mantel. On one wing, she'd written, "Thank you for choosing each other again." Every time I walk past it, I remember the morning a single text message nearly ended my marriage. And I remember the lesson it left behind. The truth may arrive late. It may hurt. It may turn your world upside down. But it's still far kinder than the stories fear writes in the silence.